for three. And a goal!
Bearcat Blitz, welcome in everybody to our back half of the week edition of the show on the Believe Network. I'm your host, Russ Heltman. He's my co-host, Neil Meyer of Rivals Cincinnati site, thefrontofficenews.com. You can catch my work on Cincinnati Bearcats on SI. Spring football midway points just hit in the early portions of April, and the Cincinnati Bearcats basketball team is still playing in April. For the first time, I think that's first time this century they've been playing this late in the season, although not in the actual NCAA tournament. They were able to get the first round victory easily over a dilapidated DePaul team on Tuesday afternoon, and they get to face another depleted team in the college basketball crown on Thursday. What an event. What a lovely, lovely consortium of talent. Oh, wait, almost half the best players in all these teams are already in the transfer portal, meaning that this is even more of a sham than it already was entering this week. I do not understand what is going on with this transfer portal dynamic. Neil and I were just talking about that a little bit before the show. It's the Wild West, to say the least, and it's not making these TV products, namely the college basketball crown, as valuable as it could be, considering, for example, UCF's top player on Thursday night, Keyshawn Hall, already an Auburn Tiger. He will not be playing for the UCF Knights, and that's a big reason why the betting spread has moved from 3.5 points to 6.5 points over at our good friends betonline.ag. We can talk about that. We'll talk about the 83-61 win over DePaul. Not much to say about that. They basically played a half a college team in that game on Tuesday afternoon, and then we will flip to the transfer portal side of things, maybe a touch on the football midway point of spring ball, but a look at the college basketball crown on this back half of the week show, and we'll look at the transfer portal where Cincinnati has another player very interested in the program, put them on his top schools list, in Illinois guard Trey White. Let's get to all that right now, starting with the college basketball crown. Neil, 83-61 win over DePaul. Neil, this one went exactly as you and I imagined it would go. DePaul brought, it's just another example of this sham tournament. DePaul had no business, zero business being a part of a postseason tournament this year. 14-19 record, 4-16 in Big East play. They were the worst team in the Big East once again, and they looked like the worst team in this tournament, Neil. It was barely a game. 83-61. 6 players, I think 6 Bearcats in double figures in this one. Yeah, there was 6 guys in double figures in Lukosius, Skillings, Bandego, Mitchell, James, and Thomas. Neil, UC had its full team. DePaul did not, and UC is going to have its full team. UCF is not. And this is the story of the college basketball crown so far. What a joy.
Yeah, absolutely, Russ. And before we get into the details of what transpired on Tuesday in this event, I'm fairly certain I was 1 point off from a perfect score prediction in this one.
Yeah, I think you got a 19-point victory, and they were close.
I needed a 20-point victory. So overall, I believe I was 1 point off. So overall, this is obviously, Russ, you and I talked about it earlier in the week, that this was kind of expected for Cincinnati due to DePaul's whole roster being in the transfer portal, essentially, with playing only 7 guys, and 2 of them in which Russ were in the transfer portal. So overall,
JJ Traynor didn't end up playing. He was a big question mark. Would have been a huge boost for DePaul in the portal. Already not a part of the postseason team.
Yeah, and this was as expected, right? You see 6 guys in double figures for Cincinnati. That is what many fans were expecting from Cincinnati back in December and January.
Well, throughout the conference play, they looked, Neil, like the team that you and I expected to see playing in the second weekend of the NCAA tournament this year. That did not come to pass, though.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of things to unpack in this one, too, because how things played out on Tuesday, Russ, was unlike many things we've seen this year, right? Especially in terms of minute allotment. It was great to see Halvin DeZellit get some early run and play a career high 15 minutes in this one. Ray even got 15 minutes to play. So those two made an impact in this game. And it was great to see what Halveen could really do, right? Not many people outside of us, Russ, who cover the team and we've been to practices extensively, weren't really familiar with what his game is. And I was very impressed with what we saw in extended minutes on Tuesday. He's got a high motor, and everybody around us in the media, we kind of talk about it, like he could be a huge force for Cincinnati. And it was great to see him get that run, but Arrington Page did not play versus DePaul, so that was something to monitor. Tyler Betsy, only 2 minutes. Ray Vaughn kind of got most of those minutes in that aspect, but overall, those were some key takeaways to kind of keep an eye on. And then on top of it, Day Thomas, 7 steals, which is third most in a game since what, Russ? Program history. So Michael Horton and Kashmir Wright are the only two with 7 or more in a game since 1998. So overall, Day Thomas continues to etch his name into history, continues to play with that defensive grit. And Russ, if Day Thomas continues to play with that kind of defensive grit, it's safe to say he's going to be back next season, as many already expected that. But it's a great sign for Cincinnati now that you know Day has this extra year under his belt for the upcoming season. I thought overall that was a performance where we wish we would have seen it earlier in conference play, but that is what Cincinnati was expected to do versus a depleted DePaul team.
Yeah, I mean, good for Day, but once again, they were playing half a college roster.
Yeah,
like you tip the cap to Day, you tip the cap to all these guys for coming in, showing up, and beating the brakes off DePaul like they should have, given the talent level that the Blue Demons were bringing to the floor. Halveen Zezelit, Neil, the great note there, career high 15 minutes, 3 points, 3 rebounds, had 2 offensive boards, was a +2 in his minutes. And then notable that Rayvon Griffith out-minuted Tyler Betsy by 14 in this game. 2 combined minutes for Tyler Betsy and Arrington Page. Neil, at this point, I would be shocked if Arrington Page is on the roster next season. At just the way his 24-25 season has gone, he has barely played at all down the stretch here. I think he's maybe scored 5 total points since the start of February. So it's been a rough past couple months for Arrington Page, and then Tyler Betsy has seen his minutes dwindle down the line here. So 2 names that are definitely ones to keep an eye on for when those transfer portal entries start to come about next week. We'll see if that ends up happening. No Bearcats have entered the portal just yet, as they all rode together to try to win this $300,000 first place NIL package, I believe, from Vivid Seats as part of the college basketball crown. Up next, Neil, they got a matchup against UCF. 6.5-point underdogs against UCF in this contest on Thursday night at 7 p.m. as we switch gears to preview that matchup. The line opened at 3.5. Keyshawn Hall commits to Auburn. Sharp bettors all across the public start to think 3.5 points. UC already beat this team by 10, and that was with Keyshawn Hall dropping 20, dropping a 20+ point performance a couple of months ago. Hall, no, not going to have him in this one, Neil. 18.8 points per game, 7.1 rebounds. I don't see how UC doesn't get the job done here and move into the semifinals against another depleted team, and probably the last depleted team they're going to go up against. UC 16-18 against the spread entering this game, 19-15 straight up, while UCF is also 16-18 ATS. They're 18-16 straight up, and UC beat UCF 93-83 on February 5th. Bart Torvik giving the Bearcats, Neil, a 66% chance to win this game with a projected score of 78-74. I'm going to take it a bit further. Give me the Bearcats 81-70 here. I think they easily cover the 6.5-point spread. And when you have a team like Cincinnati that has its full roster available, its full rotation group available, its full chemistry available, up against a team in UCF that's trying to replace the impact of Keyshawn Hall and some other guys in the transfer portal. Once again, Neil, the transfer portal is putting an absolute nuke bomb into the college basketball crown projections.
Yeah, Russ, and it's a great thing you mentioned this too, because you look back at the last matchup, right? You give your predictions 81-70 for Cincinnati, but I'm going a little more than that. I'm going to say my prediction is going to be, I'm going to go 84-62 in this one, and the reason being is, look at UCF's roster right now. No Mikey Williams, no JJ Taylor. no Keyshawn Hall. They are down literally about 7 guys that saw significant minutes over the last year. No Jalen Sellers as well, even though he missed time this year. They are massively shorthanded in this contest. And it's safe to say, Russ, when you look back at this, the only person who caused physical problems for Cincinnati this year in the last matchup down in Orlando was Mustafa Thiem. And realistically, he's going to be your shot blocker. Everybody knows that, but they're going to be very shorthanded. They only played 7 guys versus Oregon State, and that was an Oregon State game that came down to the end. So on top of it, when you see that, it's like, okay, what's going to happen? But this game, Russ, like we talk about, I don't think it's going to be close. And the reason being is Cincinnati is fully prepared to go in here with a full roster. And that being said, I mean, you look down at the box score from the other night for UCF. Let's look at it, Russ. Darius Johnson, 34 minutes. Tyler Hendricks, 32 minutes. Nils Michalski, who's probably 8th or 9th on the depth chart there for them, 27 minutes. Mustafa Thiem, 32 minutes. Debo Coleman, 20 minutes. Dior Johnson, 20 minutes, which is a season high for him. Jordan Ivy Curry, 27 minutes, a season high for them. This is another matchup where Cincinnati should have the size advantage outside of Mustafa Thiem, right? I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, the size and the depth advantage.
Correct. And outside of Thiem, I don't think they have anybody that's over 6'9" on a realistic basis. I'm just double checking that to make sure that's true. But overall, this is a game where Cincinnati should, over 6'9". Cincinnati should definitely win this game by a solid 20 points later this evening.
The line has doubled for that exact reason. It's just the Walking Dead from UCF, and just a lot of Walking Dead in this college basketball crown tournament. It's a total money grab. I don't understand the point of this thing besides trying to put another TV product out there for Fox Sports to have access to, because this is just a joke. It's an absolute joke. This is not worthy of celebration at all if they win this tournament. And you got to win this game against UCF. It's the same scenario as DePaul, Neil. It's like, if you lose to this UCF team, there are deeper issues at foot than we previously knew. It should take a mediocre effort to beat a team like the one that UCF is rolling out on Thursday night. And then things move on to the semifinal and the final, where Cincinnati, I believe, Neil, would end up playing USC. It's the winner of USC and who's the other team on the bottom of the bracket?
Pulling it up right now.
It would be USC and Villanova going up against one another. The winner of that game, where I believe, I'm not exactly sure who is favored in that contest, but Cincinnati, another team that they faced previously this season, going up against Eric Dixon and the Villanova Wildcats, possibly, or Eric Musselman and the USC Trojans. Both of those teams destroyed their first round opponents. Villanova won 85-64 and USC won 89-60. So maybe getting into some real game action once you finally get to the semifinals, but what a sham to get there. This has been it's been a joke, to say the least. That was an absolute joke on Tuesday afternoon, what DePaul was able to bring to the table. It's not DePaul's fault. They are what they are, and they have the transfer issues they have. It's just, this is the timeline that you're beholden to, with the way that the coaches have laid out the timeline for transfers to be able to enter before the entire season ends. Neil and I discussed it for the show. It makes zero sense, considering that the players still have to finish school at their respective institutions. You can't just get up and leave in the middle of March and go somewhere else to your next destination. You got to get your credits. You got to finish your schooling. And it's mind-boggling. Take a quick break here on Bearcat Blitz. Get to the transfer portal after this. Neil, looking at the latest transfer portal action by Cincinnati, we have the Bearcats making a couple cut lists. Harlan Obioha, who we talk about him earlier in the week? I believe we did. The UNC Wilmington transfer center, and Illinois guard Trey White. White, we have not talked about just yet. White is a dynamic, kind of bigger, 6'7" junior guard, posted 10.5 points, 5.5 rebounds this past season on a nice 50.7% shooting from the floor. He's down to St. John's, Oklahoma, Mississippi State, Cincinnati, Kansas, and USC, as first reported by 24/7 Sports' Deshaun London. One more year of eligibility for White, Neil, and he comes in probably at around 210 pounds, shot a career high from three and the free throw line this past season, 32.9% from deep, 82.5% from the free throw line, and has played at Louisville and USC, as well as he makes his fourth transfer trip away from another program. Could be a solid addition, Neil. 6'7", maybe get him up to 220, 225 in the Monster Factory. Strong shooter at the line and the three-point line. This is the exact type of player that could thrive in the Big 12 this coming season.
Yeah, absolutely, Russ, too. And I believe we didn't discuss it on this earlier week's episode, but it's also, speaking of the transfer portal, it's actually interesting, too, because now it's kind of some big news surrounding the basketball program. Cincinnati now has another open assistant spot, right? So we're talking about the transfer portal. We didn't talk about Drew Adams taking the Indiana assistant coach recruiting coordinator job as well. So overall, that opens another bench spot for Wes Miller for not only the second straight year, it's now the third straight year that there's an assistant spot open on Wes Miller's staff. So it's worth to note that in there as well. But obviously, Trey White would be a huge addition to us too. Like we mentioned, a big time player that you can add there in the front court who can kind of do a lot of different things for Cincinnati if he was to come here, right? You saw what he was able to do at Illinois, 10.5 points a game, 5 rebounds, shot 50% from the field. But on top of it, Russ, he has been a huge presence wherever he has gone. I mean, you looked at it, he's got stops all over, kind of all over the place, right? You and I were talking about it before this episode about the transfer portal and everything and how wild that actually is. He starts his career at USC, starts 29 games in 2022 to 2023, finishes with 9 points on the year, or 9 points per game average. 2023 to 2024, he plays for Kenny Payne at Louisville, starts 26 games, has his best year in terms of scoring volume, 12.3 points per game. And then this past season, he had his most efficient year, started nearly every game for Illinois, shot 50% from the field, increased his three-point shooting percentage by nearly 4%. Free throw percentage, Russ went from a 75.2 to an 82.4 in year 3 of college basketball. And then on top of it, averages 10.5 points a game. That is something that Cincinnati needs, right? You need that aggressive wing player who not only has the experience, but could come in and make some big-time plays. But Russ, for me personally, the name I'm really interested in for Cincinnati, and I think he could come in and he could make a big-time role and make a big-time impact for Cincinnati, is Arizona transfer KJ Lewis. I know we haven't talked about it, but I think that could be the impact player that Cincinnati needs, right? I mean, they got a great look at him firsthand this past season, but he was a impact player for Arizona. And you look at where he's receiving offers from: Kansas, UCLA, Clemson, A&M, Texas, Ole Miss, Cincinnati, Creighton, Xavier, Oklahoma. Overall, a former 4-star talent who has shown to be a veteran player and have a great career, right? You kind of need that in this kind of aspect too, while you talk about the transfer portal and all that kind of aspect. I'm pulling up his stats currently, and he didn't have the year that he really wanted for Arizona, but he finished with 11 points a game, 5 rebounds on 43% shooting. So overall, I mean, he had a very good season for Arizona. I mean, he had a career high, or a season high, I believe it was 21 versus West Virginia, and he had 21 versus Arizona State as well. So that's a big-time player right there in the transfer portal to keep an eye on.
Yeah, KJ Lewis would be an intriguing addition, to say the least. Also getting interest from Clemson and USC, and as Neil mentioned, 2 years of eligibility remaining. Other than that, we got NJ Collins, Vanderbilt's guard, reached out to by Cincinnati. He holds 1 year of eligibility at 6'4", 190 pounds. Mentioned KJ Lewis, Brian Moore Jr. as well. I think we touched on him a couple of days ago. 6'2", 185. Combo guard that has 2 years of eligibility left. But Harlan Obioha, I think we talked about him on
I think
Monday.
we briefly talked about him, but that would be a big time addition too, Russ. That would be a big time addition for Cincinnati. A 7-footer who is very experienced, but also a big body post player for Cincinnati, right? 7 foot, 280 pounds.
Big body. 280 instead of 230 at 7 foot. That's a huge difference in the Big 12.
19th in the country in offensive rebounding percentage and top 100 in the country in block percentage and fouls drawn. So overall, that's a big time post player. And Russ, Cincinnati desperately missed a big time post presence. So they got to find something there in the front court, especially with Aziz Bandego running out of eligibility. And you never know what could be coming for Arrington Page, especially not seeing him really play much the back half of conference play. Your only stretch big is Tyler McKinley right now and Hal Veen. So overall, that would probably be a position of need for Cincinnati. And he is set to visit Cincinnati following the dead period, which is actually going to be taking place from this Friday to this Monday while the national championship and the college season wraps up.
Yeah, 1 more year of eligibility left for the UNC Wilmington transfer. Likely going to be checking out Clifton sometime next week or next weekend in that range. 7 foot, 280 pounds, 64% career shooter. Be a solid addition. If not as a starter, at least a good rotation piece in the big man side of things. For Neil Meyer and Russ Eltman, this has been Bearcat Blitz presented by Bet Online. Talk to you all after the wrap up of the crowd this weekend for Cincinnati Bearcats basketball and some more football practices from the spring side of things. We'll touch back on the football side after this weekend on Bearcat Blitz. Enjoy the rest of the week, everybody.
This is the second. 15 seconds left. Shot clock off. 4-point game. DeJulius puts up a 3.